Teri, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Hi, it is a delight to be here.
So happy to have you. You and I have been friends for a long time. I think we met when I was doing a 12-step class. It was like 12 steps in 6 weeks or something like that. And you joined, and it's been an amazing journey getting to know you. And you're like one of my biggest supporters. So thank you so much for showing up and being such a blessing in my life.
Well, thank you, dear. Um, a mutual friend had heard about the 12 steps in 6 weeks,
Uh-huh.
and so she told me about it, and I told one of my sponsees about it, and we all did it. And what you don't know is my sponsee is just chomping at the bits now to do some things to help others. And
Oh,
so it's like layers and layers of effects from it.
that's a beautiful thing. We should do that again.
Yes.
I think we've been meaning to, but when one of these days I will get organized and we'll do another free challenge. We
Yeah.
had probably 200 people sign up for it the first time we
Yeah.
did it, and that was well over a year ago, right?
It was probably more than a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Oh my
Seriously,
goodness.
time goes.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
to do this again. So I'll make sure you join. If you're listening and you're not on the newsletter, be sure to join the newsletter because that's where I will announce it you can sign up for it at odatchat.com. I haven't changed the website. I changed the name of the podcast, but not the website. So
Okay. And then you've got other things. I know this isn't a promo for you, but you've got the reinvent coming up.
yes, that's a sort of an ongoing thing. I'll talk more about that later. But
Okay.
yes, classes and things. And I just love that you participate in everything. You're so much fun to have in class.
I try. And the sobriety, the 30-day sobriety boot camp.
Yeah, sobriety
Um,
reset,
yeah,
sobrietyreset.com. There's
yes.
that for the newcomers as
And I
well.
just, it's a great outlet to be able to share um, with other people. It's fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is fun. Yeah, we insist on having a good time, as
Yeah.
they say. Well, listen, let's talk about you. I am excited to have the listeners meet you
Okay.
because you have an amazing story of transformation on so many levels. And I'll have you tell your story. But before we jump in, you want to do the lightning round real quick?
Let's get it over with.
I love your enthusiasm.
Hey, I don't do anything I don't want to do, but I'm willing
Correct.
to do anything.
Yeah, you're like me. I say I'll try anything twice,
Yeah, yes.
just in case I didn't do it right the first time.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a favorite recovery book?
I'm going to, I think, surprise you. Uh,
Okay.
and I've been looking forward to this because I know this is a question you asked.
Okay.
Aaron Beck is a psychologist or psychiatrist back in the 60s.
Okay.
He wrote, and I pulled it up on the phone so I could be sure and say it right. He wrote some books. He was kind of like the one that popularized cognitive therapy.
Really?
And
Okay.
yes, Professor Aaron Beck, Aaron, and he wrote some books. His first one was Depression Causes and Treatment. And then he wrote a second one, Cognitive Therapy and the Emotional Disorders. And what happened when I was in treatment, um, my counselor, she did a wonderful job. I was a challenge, and I made her job very difficult for her, not
Mhm.
intentionally, but because I was sick. And
Uh,
she was using the cognitive therapy approach and some of the things outlined by Beck that deal with how we process things. It deals with suicidal behavior,
mm,
and so after we'd been doing it for a long time, she told me what her source, what the type about Beck. Well, I went out and bought his books and
right.
devoured them. And that's kind of how I do when I'm dealing with something like a medical issue in my life,
Right.
um, is I try to find out all I can about it. And so Beck, he talks about how automatic thoughts come into our heads, how they affect our feelings, what we can do about it, how we can deal with those automatic thoughts before they become controlling. And, we can identify our feelings, we can speak truth to those things, and change the way we think, change the way we feel, and change the way we live.
I
I don't
love
know if
that.
he's still alive, but he probably owes me royalties now.
Yes, of course he owes you. Dealing with automatic thoughts before they become consuming. Is that what you said? Or
Okay,
controlling? Is that,
yeah,
but okay.
that works. I don't
Controlling.
remember what I said. Hey, let's establish early in this
Oh,
interview, I don't
yes.
remember a thing.
You and I are
Yeah,
struggling with memory. You are not alone, girlfriend.
yeah, yeah. So if I start a sentence, I won't always know by the end of it where I was going.
Same.
Oh,
This will be
yeah,
fun. Oh,
yeah, but
we'll
it
be
was
like the Keystone Cops if anybody is
okay.
old enough to remember
Yeah,
what
no,
that even
the
is.
idea is that we have automatic thoughts that come into our minds.
Yes.
And some of them they come into our minds, I don't know how many there's studies, how many hundreds or thousands times a day.
Yeah.
And quite often they're negative.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And repetitive.
and repetitive, exactly. So
Yeah.
we can record those thoughts, write them down,
Okay.
recognize them.
Uh-huh.
And then we can look at them and say, how do I feel when I think this thought?
Yes.
And is that thought true?
Is it true? Yeah, we don't even
And
question our thoughts.
no, we don't. We question our feelings. We beat ourselves up for our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it isn't true, then I can dismiss it. But whether it's true or not, then I can look at how I feel and I can think, is that feeling appropriate for that thought? Is that feeling appropriate for me? And is it helpful for me? Or is it more destructive or difficult for me? And so it's the old the debate, I think, thoughts versus feelings versus nurture versus nature, all of those things. It eliminates that because it recognizes that each of them plays a part.
Oh, yeah.
And so we deal with that progression and we can go at it from both ends. We can jump in the middle, but we can improve how we feel.
Each play a part. I love that.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend today who manifested she reached out to her professor colleagues. She's a professor. She reached out to her colleagues and say, hey, who's going on vacation this summer and needs a house sitter? And someone was like, I do. I live in San Diego. Come to my house and house sit for a week. And we have a pool and it's beautiful and all that. So she gets there and she's simultaneously proud of herself for manifesting this free
Yeah.
vacation in San Diego and then beating herself up because she doesn't feel like she'll be able to ever be able to have that for herself. Right. And so the conversation was, which of these feelings do I honor, basically, or which thought? And it's that whole story about which do you feed, the good wolf or the bad wolf?
Yeah.
Whichever one you feed is the one that grows stronger.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a very interesting. I love that you say that feelings each play a part. We have to acknowledge all the feelings and process
Yeah.
them.
And
Genius.
so help me to remember, I referred to his model for understanding suicide. And
Okay.
eventually in this, I'd like to touch on that because it helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
And there was a second thing, but I've already forgotten it.
Okay, model for understanding suicide. I think that'll be really important to talk about because I think a lot of people in recovery at one point or another will contemplate that
Yeah.
question
Yes.
or contemplate that as a solution. And so that's the whole point of me doing this podcast is I'll start asking you about questions about your recovery story, but that is a very important solution. Like that's suicide is a permanent solution for a temporary problem, right? So we'll talk about those. I will definitely highlight. I'll put a pin in it, as
All
they
right.
say, and we'll circle back.
Good.
Let's
The
see.
round is not going very rapidly, dear.
I know that's okay. That's
I'm happy to do
okay.
that to you.
I never do it very quickly, and
Good.
mostly because such great conversation comes out of it. So it's all good. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you live by, or maybe something early in recovery that blew your mind?
I'd say that there are two.
Okay.
One is to thine own self be true, and the other is be honest with yourself, with your God, and with other human beings.
Okay. With yourself, God, and other human beings.
Yeah, with yourself, your God, and
Ah,
other human beings. Because
thank you for
I'm
clarifying.
well, the reason I want to highlight that, I'm a retired minister, and
Mhm.
I try very hard to ensure that people know I'm not going to try to force my beliefs or my understanding of the world or of God on them.
Right.
And so that may be more important to me than it is to others, but the
No,
your
that
there is important.
yeah, no, I love that, right? We all have our own understanding and it needs to make sense to us. So
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing those. What is your regular self-care routine? I already know the answer to this. I feel like I'm
You do.
cheating a little bit, but
Well, let me tell you a couple things. One, the concept of a smorgasbord. Um,
yes. Oh my gosh, so good.
I have a tendency when I do, like when I would start a morning ritual and I would think, okay, I'm a minister, I should read something in the Bible. And then I pray and, then I'd journal and I'd reflect. But when I pray, there's so many good prayers. There's the Serenity Prayer in its entirety. There's the St. Francis prayer that I love.
Mm,
And there's others. And there's some things that I find that aren't prayers, but really are. And so I'd start wanting to pray each one of them. And then I'd find several sources to read from. And my time just kept growing and growing and growing. And so
yeah.
then I would think, okay, I can't do everything today. So on Monday I'll do St. Francis, on Tuesday I'll do St. Francis, Wednesday, and I'll break it down. And before it's all over, I have this massive, intricate system that falls under its own weight.
Right. Yeah.
And I can't do it all, and I become overwhelmed.
Yes.
So a friend of mine, Arlena, and I came up with this idea of a smorgasbord. And in fact, yesterday I went to a cafeteria for lunch. I'm so
Uh-huh.
glad I found it. It was delightful. Had real vegetables, fried okra, Southern style. But anyway, that's not what
Wow.
you're here for. Um, but the idea of a smorgasbord is you go down the line and you select what you want for that meal.
Yeah.
And everything is good. And there's not something wrong with it, but you want a balanced approach
Mm-hmm.
and you want enough, but you don't want to gorge.
Right.
And there's some things like the desserts that I try to avoid, but every once in a while I'll have one.
Yeah.
And so the smorgasbord in self-care means some days I focus on exercise, whether it's going for a walk or doing Tai Chi or yoga. Um, or some mornings I'll focus on reading and prayer and meditation
Mm.
or journaling. Um, a number of things like that. Sometimes it's allowing rest, not, um, I don't like the idea of meditation where people think that they have to empty their minds
Me
or
either.
or thoughts coming in their mind have to be dismissed or recognized and honored and then sent on their way. For me, meditation is heavily cognitive and heavily emotive. And
Mm.
so that's why I journal. And I just, I'm learning. I've learned things from myself when I journal that I didn't know. And so
Yes.
as I'm writing, the pen writes things to me.
Oh,
And so I'm learning and I'm writing and I read a sentence and I say, wow, and so I learned from that. So that's one thing is that smorgasbord concept.
I love that approach.
And
Yeah.
it frees me to say, I don't have to do everything. I don't have to eat it all, do it all perfect. I'm still thinking about the food part. I don't have to clean my plate.
Yeah. I like that, what you said about buckling under the weight of all the things that we could be doing.
Yes,
Right. Yeah.
that's
Just,
hard for me. I do that in so
yeah.
many ways. And
Perfectionism is definitely, yeah, we'll just let perfectionism go. Right.
it's there. It's there.
Yes.
And it's
It's,
totalitarian. It's
yeah.
comprehensive.
Right.
It takes over everything.
Yeah.
And lately, I've been engaged in your challenge for 30 days of meditation, and I've made most of them.
Doing
This morning I
great.
stepped in. I was trying to think of a name for the meditation I did this morning. It was, I don't know if sonoric is a word, but it was sleeping meditation.
You
Um,
slept through it. So
I
here's
felt,
the funny thing. People tell me, oh, I missed some, so I didn't do good. And or that's not correct
yeah,
English, but you know what I'm saying. But the
yeah,
idea of consistency is different from the idea of perfectionism, right? Like over
it
the
is.
month, like you have been the one that shows up the most. So gold star for you. But
Oh, good.
yeah, and you're saving my hide by showing
Yeah.
up. So
Well, that's one
it's
of the neat things about
amazing.
AA. I learned earlier we have a whole group of people, or any 12-step program.
Right.
We have a whole group of people who are each there to take care of their own problem. It's
Right.
very self-centered.
Sure.
And yet we learn that the way to take care of our own problem is to invest in the lives of others.
Yeah.
So it's not self-centered at all. So you've got this balance, and it's amazing how it works.
Turning
But
defects into assets, right?
yes. And so
Hmm.
during this meditation exercise, we do some breathing, and then we do the meditation. And I've learned so much, and it has helped me. And maybe we can talk about it when we're not doing the rapid round. It has helped me face some significant fears and
Mm.
overcome them.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
I love hearing that. Yeah, it's been very transformative in my life as well. So I, as you know, will do for others what I won't do for myself.
right.
So I needed to, I have some personal challenges and or family issues. And so I was like, I need to double down on my self-care. So how about, I know I need to meditate, but I'm so restless. So I was like, hey, let's do a meditation challenge. I will show up if I know other people need me to do
Yeah.
it.
Yes, exactly.
So
And I do need that. I need something that I have to, I don't like the word accountability, but I need somebody that's waiting for a response.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know,
I was like,
and
Teri, I need you. Come show
yeah.
up for this meditation.
But
And you
the other
showed
thing
up.
that's funny, without going into details, you mentioned your family and my family, we've had some significant traumas,
Mm-hmm.
and the only people that have family issues, the only women that have family issues are those who have a significant other or have children or don't have a significant other or don't have
Or
children.
don't yes. So everybody
Yeah,
wins in the game of family.
yeah.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much for participating in that
But your
meditation
family is
challenge.
beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we love you. We all love you dearly. Okay, let's go to the next question. Is there I'm almost afraid to ask, what's the one thing you wish you knew when you
I'm
first got
sorry.
sober?
I was so laughing about the idea of one thing. There's no one in my life.
I know,
What
I
was the
know.
question?
What's the one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?
Oh, that
I
the
know.
people helping me really were on my side.
Oh, I love that.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I was so suspicious. I'd gotten a DUI and I didn't trust the counselors. I know that HIPAA, the law about privacy and confidentiality in medical records, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't trust the counselors. I didn't trust the police. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my spouse. I didn't trust my employer. Um, Everybody was out to get me,
Mm,
but they were all out to get me
suspicious.
healthy.
They were all out to get me, but they were out to get me healthy.
Yeah,
Girl, you are full of brilliant quotes today.
yeah.
I love that. Oh,
Sometimes
that's
I amaze myself, the
yeah.
profound this flows.
They were all out to get me healthy.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to rattle this down. Okay, what do you do for fun?
This. No,
Fun.
you know, one of the problems with alcoholism is we lose fun. We let alcohol consume our lives, and that's all we do is drink.
Mhm.
And we forget how to have fun.
Mhm.
And, sometimes I look back, there's days I think, I don't remember the last time I had fun. And even doing things that I enjoy, I don't know if I'm having fun. But you know what because of COVID, we've gone into the internet and into communications online. As a result, I literally have friends around the world,
Yeah.
and many of them are young ladies. And I don't coach, I don't mentor, I don't pastor. I'm a cheerleader. And one of them sent me a picture of a cheerleader up in the air doing one of her cheers, and her arms are spread, and she's got her legs in the split.
You
I
didn't want to say she spread her legs. I
I
understand.
didn't want to say that. Yeah. Um, but well, and the other thing is, I set a goal a couple of years ago in yoga to by the end of the year be able to do a split, and I
How's that
knew I was
going?
never going to reach it. But what it did do, it helped me work on my
Hip
flexibility.
flexors. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's anyway. But cheerleading, I do for
Cheerleading.
fun.
Okay.
That is I love to love,
Yeah,
you know.
you
And
do.
so I see a young lady in whatever field, and I interact with young ladies in a number of fields,
Yeah.
and I'm 62, so by young I mean anybody under 80. But you know, but most of them are, maybe in their 30s.
Yeah.
Um, and they're establishing themselves, and they're growing, and they're facing challenges. And it's
Mm.
fun I don't help solve their problems. It's fun just to say, you go, you're doing, look at what you did. And
Yeah.
holding a mirror up, that's damn fun.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is really good. I
Yeah,
love
you've
that.
done
Yeah.
that for me.
Yes, I think that's fun too. I love being the cheerleader. Also not able to do the splits any longer. And you're so funny that you would say that. I YouTubed it. I tried for like a week and then I was like, yeah, that's not important.
Well, no, but setting an unreachable goal
Mm,
is sometimes good if you know what you're doing. We
yeah.
always talk about realistic goals, and we don't reach an unrealistic one and we feel defeated. I knew from the beginning I was never going to do a split, but I kept trying in water aerobics and in yoga and
Nice.
doing things that helped me, and it increased. And
Okay.
there was this one young lady at the gym. I was on the walking track, and I walked around, and she was standing on her head doing a perfect split. So she looked like a T.
Oh, wow.
I mean, perfect.
She did that in public?
She did.
That's brave.
And well, yes, but I walked by and I looked at that and I thought, damn, I wish I could do that.
I know
You
it
know,
looks amazing when I see people, other women doing the splits in yoga, and I was like, wow, that looks amazing. I would really like to. Maybe I'll keep trying. I don't know,
I
but
can
that's
do
a
an
fun
upside down Y.
upside down one. That's a brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about your story because and I do want to save a little time at the end to talk about a few solutions that we kind of touched on some things to thine own self be true,
Yeah.
your morning practice, but you had some other solutions around breathing and correcting thoughts because I know you had some religious trauma and you use these tools to move through a very difficult experience. But how
Yeah.
about you take maybe 10 minutes to sort of give us a recap of the highlights of your
Okay.
recovery journey?
Okay. Um, I grew up in a military family, so we moved every 2 or 3 years. And the positive effect that has is I'm very flexible. I'm very adaptive, and I am able to find friends anywhere I go. And so I have understandings of people, that I enjoy the differences. I don't have a parochial view of life. Um, my family, we believed in God. We were nominally Christian, I would say. Um, I think my parents had some difficulties around religion when they were younger, And so, I was taught about believing in God, but we very rarely went to church. And when I was in junior high and high school, I became involved in church and became very active in church. But I remember, I guess it started in about sixth grade. Uh, well, probably I'd say fourth grade. The feeling of unworthiness and feeling like I was second best. Um, anatomically, excuse me, anatomically, I was born a boy, and I had four brothers, and each of them thought they had four brothers. Um, but my mom, as we were growing up, always told me if you were born a girl, we were going to name you Teresa Colleen. And I assumed she had picked that name for a daughter because back in the 50s, they didn't know whether it would be a boy or a girl until they were born. And so they picked a name for a boy and a name for a girl, depending on who came. And so I assumed that she had picked that name for each of us and just passed it down. And so later, when I came out to my brothers, I said something about that, and they said, no, she never said that to us. And I think, wow. And so that's why I have the name I have. Um, a lot of transgender people sought their names for a number of reasons, but my parents named me, and
Hmm.
that's special to me.
That is
Um,
special.
but, when I was in grade school, I didn't enjoy sports, I wasn't good at it. And living in a boy's life that made me feel less than.
Hmm.
Um, I would sometimes look over at the girls across the street playing and wish I could be there with them, and among them as one of them, but I didn't understand it at the time. And so I grew up, became active in church, and there's mixed messages, mixed signals. In church, we were taught what is today known as purity culture. Don't do anything sexual until you're married, and then never do anything outside of marriage. And so the big question was, how far can you go and not be bad? Um, and so I would sit in youth group and hear all the guys, saying the right answer. And then during the week in school, I heard and saw what the guys were actually doing. And I lived that same double life.
Hmm.
And that set up for me a pattern of duplicity, of doubleness in my life that I have struggled with ever since.
Hmm.
Um, so not feeling like I was enough, this conflicting I don't know what to call it, doubleness. And so but what I tended to do is dive into everything completely. And so I became a minister and became an army chaplain. I pastored a small church for a couple of years and then became an army chaplain. Had a good career over 28 years of active service and did some phenomenal things as I look back on it. Um, but again, all the way through my career, feeling like I was not good enough, like I had to do better. And whatever rank I was, I should be the next one. Um, at the end of my career, well, I guess the last 10 years, I really didn't start drinking until I was in my early 40s. I drank a few times before then, but not a whole lot. Um, and so, but when I started, boy, I went. And so then I was not just having a conflicting double draw on my life, I was actually kind of living a double life, but I was doing it in the open. And, I wasn't hiding that I was drinking. So I, near the end of my career, I was 10 months away from retirement and I got a DUI. And I could have gotten one many times before. Um, I never, fortunately, my driving never hurt anybody or damaged anything. But I got a DUI, and in the military, you can lose some or all of your retirement based on things like that. And it has to go up for a review at the Department of the Army level. And so my goal for 10 months until retirement was to do whatever I had to do to save my retirement.
Mm.
And so they put me into alcohol and substance abuse program, counseling and therapy. And they sent me to an inpatient treatment. And I spent 2 days very effectively, consistently telling the same lies.
Mm.
And, in the assessment phase, they ask you all these questions and they come at you from every direction. And I knew what they were doing and I consistently answered. And so at the end of the assessment on Wednesday afternoon, I was in talking with my psychiatrist. And of course, he had all the information in front of him from all of the interviews. And he said, "Well, I think you're suffering from um, depression." And I said, "Oh, no, doc, I'm fine. I've had a couple rough days." He said, "Well, when you talk to this person, were you crying?" "Well, yes." "And when you talk to this person?" "Yes." "And this, and this, and this." And he said, "I think you're suffering from melancholy depression." And I said, "No, I'm really okay, doc." So we finished and I left and I went and I sat on my bunk. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking about what he said. And all he did was lay the facts in front of me. And I thought about those facts. And I don't know how it happened, but I suddenly heard myself praying. And whether it was out loud or in my mind, I don't know. But I said, God, I am suffering depression. And oh, by the way, I guess I'm an alcoholic. So I had admitted it to myself and I had admitted it to my God. The next morning, I went in early and saw that same doc and told him. And I thought I was going to be in trouble for having lied, because in the military, honesty and honor is vital. And so instead, he was excited because I was buying in. What I didn't know is I had stumbled onto what we do in 12-step programs. In the fifth step, we are honest with ourselves, with our God, and with another human being. And so that was the first step in me being true to myself. As I went through that program, I grew a lot and I learned a lot. I went back home and I was in counseling, individual and group counseling for the remainder of my time in the Army. And I tried very hard to be honest. And I grew to trust my counselor. She was phenomenal. Um, and one day I had enough confidence, and it's a longer story, so I won't do it, but it was based on what another person in group had done. And it just shows the impact of when we are honest
Mm.
and true to ourselves, we help others to be. I told the counselor I had a box in my heart that I'd never opened and nobody had seen in it. And I lifted the lid off of it and I let her see something. And that was my femininity. And I
Mm.
didn't understand it. I didn't know what it was. I was filled with guilt and shame. And for decades, I had struggled against it. And she took that out of the box and she held it lovingly and tenderly. And she honored it.
Mm.
And she gave it to me, handed it back gently, and helped me to normalize it and to realize that it's okay to be who I am.
Wow.
And that turned my life around because I began to learn what it meant to be transgender. Because there were times, part of being transgender is you want to look the part. So put on clothing, put on makeup. Typically, I would do it when I was on a trip and in my hotel room. I would go by a store and buy some clothes, go to the hotel room, put them on, wear them in the hotel room because I was afraid to go out. And then before I left, throw them away, because I couldn't take home any evidence. Um, so sometimes I drank to get ready to dress. I drank while I dressed, and then I drank because I dressed.
Mm.
Now, I try to be careful not to say I drank because of something. I drank because I chose to drink, but there are factors that contributed to it. And the other thing that contributed to it was death. I had been in combat. I have seen death. I've seen body parts. Um, as a minister, I've been at hospitals. I've been at homes. I've been at death scenes. I've told families. I've told children that. And so what happened? I got to a point where when I had to do a casualty notification, I would go home to put on my dress uniform. I would take a drink, only one because I couldn't smell it on my breath. We would go and do what we had to, and then I would go home and finish getting drunk. And I bottled it all up. So I was bottling in my identity. I was bottling in my guilt and shame. I was bottling in uh, the trauma from having to do that. And the cork popped off the bottle finally.
Yeah.
Um, and so that when I went through the program, I started to experience feelings, and they were very raw and new and different. And that is, I went on this roller coaster. That's actually when I was getting better, was when I first thought about suicide,
Hmm.
because I was going to these highs and then plummeting to these lows. And going back to Beck, he has a cognitive triad that when we're depressed and suicidal, we tend to have these three symptoms or beliefs. One is a negative view of ourselves. Another is a negative view of the world around us. And the third is a negative view of our future. And so I never wanted to die. I just sometimes saw no reason to live.
Mm.
Everything was negative. And so over time, I've gained tools to deal with that. Um, and so, these different threads, um, I began to understand and express my femininity, and I continued on with counseling after I left the military. I continued in counseling on my own, and then I became involved in the Veterans Affairs. And sometimes they get a bad rap, but there are things that they do that are phenomenal. And I increasingly grew to understand and love myself as a woman,
Mm.
and to express myself as a woman, and to live as a woman. And in the process, I've gained and lost a lot. But being true to ourselves means living what is right for us. Um, and so through 12 steps, through counselors, I've continued to grow. I'm about to go into an intensive PTSD program, and I'm both hopeful and terrified of what it will entail. Um, but coming forward to today and the religious trauma and and the meditation and the way that all these things come together, I in the meditation, the breathing and the meditation and the prayer and the journaling, I began to identify things. And I recognized that even though my church has started having in-person services, and the church is right next door to my apartment complex, I'd not gone.
Mm.
And I thought about it and I realized why. A year and a half ago, I was serving in a church as a co-pastor, and I had gone there in good faith upon retirement from the Army as a male. Now, they'd had female pastors, they weren't against female pastors. But I gradually, during the time I was there, I was simultaneously growing in my womanhood. And sometimes it showed. It turns out if you wear mascara to church, people do see it. Um,
My goodness.
so I came out to my church the first Sunday in January of 2020. And we worked out an agreement where I left the last Sunday of February. And none of us knew that COVID was about to happen. Um, but I made this step and went up to visit a friend whose husband was recovering, and then some terrible things happened, and uh, she lost him. So I came here to where I currently live in South Carolina for about 2 weeks to help her get things situated. And I ended up staying. So now I have my own apartment here and am living here. Um, and so as I've been thinking about that, I thought, what's keeping me from church? And I realized the last Sunday that I was in a sanctuary was the Sunday that they let me go. And
Mm,
thinking of ways to say it, it's kind of like they wore a nice, soft, fluffy slipper as they kicked me out the door. They were
right.
very kind, very loving. About half the church was very supportive of me. Um, but I didn't process it. I didn't know what to do with it. And then as I've gone, I've realized that I have religious trauma dating way, way back because I try to do what I'm supposed to do and believe what I'm supposed to believe. And so I've embraced things that I've always thought, well, I'm not sure about that. And I've advocated things that really were distractful even to myself. And so that is part of my religious trauma. But by facing it, um, I've been able to go forward. And it's helped me. So a week ago, I went to church and literally with fear and trembling, um, I was shaking and I stayed in the sanctuary for about 4 minutes before I went out. And then as the service was nearing an end, I was able to re-enter and kind of claim the ground to mark it. I did it. I was there. And so I sat through the end of the service with a friend, one of our ministers, and he just had his arm around me, reassuring me. And it was really beautiful. I was sitting there crying and shaking while everybody else was singing or whatever they were doing. And but one moment I looked up and he had his arm around me to reassure me, and his other hand, he was holding his husband's hand.
Mm,
And in that, I saw the scope of love that is available to us as humans, the wide range of ways that we can give love to people. Um, so that kind of brings me to where I am now. Um, can I tell you about TransGrams?
please do. I was going to ask you about it. I think the work that you're doing there is amazing. I do have one quick
Oh,
question
okay.
though. I was so curious. You said you didn't start drinking until your early 40s.
Mm.
Was that triggered by having to do all the casualty notifications?
No, really, I had done some by that point, but we I'd have to do a calendar and get the timing right. But no, it was um, I wanted to do it. I found a hunting and fishing buddy,
Uh-huh.
and off we went.
Yeah, but wanting to do it, it's been my experience that there's like an emotional thing that's underneath like they say that alcoholism is a symptom of a deeper problem. And
Yes,
I didn't know if that coincided with the combat and casualty notifications that you were dealing with, as well as maybe starting to explore, like when you were dressing as a woman
yes,
secretively. I didn't know if that was sort of all happening at the same time. Maybe that was underneath the drinking.
yes. And I think the doubleness in my life,
Mm,
the
double life.
yes, the projecting one thing as a minister, but really not believing it myself.
Right.
And so, for example, in my religious background, drinking is just not something we did. It wasn't allowed.
Right. Right.
And but I looked at it and I thought, that's stupid. There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
And to this day, I don't mind being with people to drink. In fact, they can have mine. You know,
You're so generous.
I am. I know
Yeah.
I can't have mine.
Yeah.
But if they
Yeah.
can handle it, power to them.
God bless them.
Um,
Bless their
yeah.
hearts.
And so I think it was that doubleness in my life
Yeah.
where I was projecting things that I really wasn't that sure of myself.
Right.
But I'm a very good speaker
You
and a
are.
good preacher and a good pastor. And so I did an effective job of projecting those things. And so I was very good at doing what I didn't want to do in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And
No.
yes, that's certainly true in dealing with families, dealing with death. It was after Desert Storm. It was before we'd gone back in, um, and so the casualty notifications were not heavy at that point. But I did deal with death, and I became very good at it.
Mm.
Um, I went to a funeral home for a service, and in the sanctuary part, everybody's very somber and quiet and hushed tones. And the funeral director said, "Well, chaplain, come back here with me a moment." So we went back, and he opened the office door, and it was silent. And he closed the door, and there was a party going on. I mean, it wasn't not really a party, but people were laughing and joking because they're real people
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they have to live their lives. And outside their door was somber,
Yeah.
but inside their door, it was different. And I said, "Oh, that's how you do it."
Balance.
No, I wish it was balanced. For me, it was bottling up.
Okay.
For me, it was
Okay.
pressing down,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
pressing those emotions down.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I became very good. I could express compassion and love, and I could always say the right thing, and I could always know when not to say anything, but just to be there. I
Mm.
was very good at it, but it was eating at my own heart.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
Yeah.
that then
That's a lot.
when the time did come that I was doing, like 3 casualty notifications a week,
Oof.
um, it really magnified it.
Yeah.
I'd go and it's again, that's a whole nother story, but we would knock on somebody's door. Inside is a family who is proud of a soldier that's serving somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And when we knock on the door and they open it and they see it, that all ends. And
Mm.
it's like we have killed their soldier. We are the angels of death,
Right.
and we are destroying their lives.
Brutal.
It is
Brutal.
brutal. And again, I would debrief the person that was with me doing it. I would debrief the people at the casualty office, and then I would go home and drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in the big picture, if there's a good way to deal with what we have to deal with, the military does a very good job of caring for the families of
Mm-hmm.
those who die. It's just amazing how well they do. It's tragic that we have developed abilities because we've had to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, why did I start drinking was your question?
Well, I was just curious
Yeah.
because in your 40s, they say that I forgot where I heard this, but it was some study that was like, oh, if you continue to drink long enough, you will, everybody would develop alcoholism at some point, given enough time. And so by your early 40s, if you are unable to process pain to resolution,
Hmm.
then we start developing compulsions that act as avoidance or a distraction to that pain. Like in my mind, the purpose of obsession is distraction, and the distraction
Yeah.
is from the pain. So pain, there's that lie that time heals all wounds. It doesn't. The pain waits. I've been in recovery 27 years, and I've heard so many people over those years sharing pains that is decades old,
Yes.
decades, right? So
Yes. And
time does not heal the wounds.
no, and that's what I'm learning and dealing with in some of the traumas that I'm facing, that I'm coming to face through the
Right.
meditation.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Yeah. So
you
we've been
know,
practicing the rain meditation, a YouTube video
yes,
by Tara Brock. And
yes,
RAIN stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And
yes,
it has been such a healing process for me too, because it's a way to siphon off a little bit of that pain every single day.
right.
I mean,
And
we move through life and life is hard. So we need to be able to have a way to process to resolution.
right. And I looked at that and I thought, if we're going to do this for say over a month, weekdays, 20 days or so, I thought, do I have 20 things to have to work through? No, you know. And I
That's
was
because
thinking,
we're disassociated from our pain. We don't realize.
yes. Oh, I've had no problems
I know, is that
having
funny?
things to
Yeah.
work through. Yeah,
Funny thing.
Yeah,
Let's transition a little bit. Let's talk a
I'm good
little
at
bit about,
transitioning.
I know you're,
I've been doing it for a long time.
you are unrecognizable.
I am not half the man I used to be.
I love it. We're working on the other half.
We are.
God bless. Government laws are changing. And
Oh,
anyway,
they are. The president announced that
I know. I'm
the
so excited for you.
the yeah, the Veteran
Yeah.
Affairs is going to pay for gender confirmation surgery.
I like how you're saying gender confirmation as opposed to gender. Didn't they used to call it gender reassignment?
They did it. It's had a lot of names,
Okay,
and
but I like the
but
confirmation.
that's a more positive
Yeah,
description.
I like it. I like it. So that we'll work on the other half of that, half the man thing. But I would love to talk about transgrams because you mentioned something about like your superpower is loving others, right?
Okay.
And so transgrams, you are sort of embody, a lot of I'm not, listen, I don't pretend to be any kind of an expert in the LGBTQ community, but I'm not blind, right? And I do love people myself. So
Good.
I have been aware and seen the lack of family support in a lot of cases, right? And the not everybody has a loving grandma, right? And
That's
there's
right.
something so pure about the love of a grandmother.
There is.
And yes, right. And so
Yeah.
it's so interesting as you have been doing the on Instagram, you have your transgrams and the
Yes.
messages of love that you get are going viral, which is so exciting. It's just a testament that there's so many people who are just so thirsty for the family love.
Yes. Well, I lost um, a lot of friends when I
Mhm,
transitioned,
mhm.
and it hurts. Um, it got to partially because of COVID, where my social sphere consisted of three people, and two of them were they were children, and wonderful people that I loved and they loved me, but that's not a very big social circle.
Right,
And
yeah.
I was able to develop a social circle online, and a mutual friend of ours was encouraging me to do TikTok, and I couldn't see why in the world and what good it would do and who would want to see anything I had to say. But finally, she talked me into it, so I did it. And I mean, within the first few days, we had 500 people watching and making comments, and then it was 1,000, and I think now I'm almost to 3,000. But it's not the number of them that I'm concerned about. Um, what happened in the early beginning of it, I was just telling about life, and a lot of them sent messages saying, calling me names. They called me primarily Auntie and Grams and or Grandma and Queen. And I didn't know. I understand now. Queen's a compliment, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
They were not telling me to join a band, but you know, I began to realize they need a grandma, and at the same time, I was struggling with. Wait a minute, I'm not old enough to be a grandma. But apparently it turns out I am. When did that happen? I
Girl,
don't know.
you could have been a grandmother in your 40s.
I could have.
Yeah,
But
that's a
anyway,
thing.
yeah, so the name TransGrams came to us, and so we changed it to that, and it's grown. And basically, I just tell about my life. I've told some things about my own transition stories.
Yeah.
I've told just what I was doing that day, going for a walk. Um, one of my favorite places to go is a park nearby where there's some waterfalls, and the waterfalls make it hard to tape, and people that really care about the sound quality fuss about it. And but I just love the water, and so oh well. Um, you know, I saw a
Have that
meme
old
that
self
said,
be true.
yes, exactly. Well, no, I saw a meme that said, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I drink coffee, so F you. That's kind of funny. Um, but but apparently there, and I had people writing and they'd say, I wish you were my grandma.
Oh,
And that tore my heart. And I won a couple of them in particular, this conversation. I wish you were my grandma. And I wrote back and I said, I am your grandma. Because
Mm,
anybody that puts a comment, I try to respond in some way.
mhm.
And I simply said, I am your grandma. And then I get notes back like, I'm so glad because my biological grandma was so mean to me.
Oh,
And it just tore my heart
mm,
because it was never targeted toward LGBTQ people. I just happen to be one of them and
mhm.
they relate. But I have other people. I have cisgender, heterosexual people, married, single, whatever combination you want to come up with,
Yeah,
I
just
have them
people.
all. And but finally I realized the core of my message is I love you and you can love you too.
Yeah.
Because through my own struggle, learning to love myself was a central component to finally learning how to really love people.
Yeah.
And learning to love myself was hard. And I'd ask my therapist, they'd say, you have to learn to love yourself. And I said, where is the love yourself in 12 easy steps or 10 easy steps or 6 ways successful people love themselves? Those books aren't out there. And I didn't know how to love myself. And finally, a counselor asked me when my first child was born and happened to be a son. And she said, when you held him the first time, did you love him? And I said, oh, yes. He was just so beautiful. And she said, what had he done to earn that love? And I said, nothing. And she said, you don't have to do a damn thing to be worth being loved, to be loved. And that includes loving yourself.
Wow.
And that was a pivotal moment. Um, it wasn't a great emotional moment, but it was a pivotal moment because I don't know what it changed. It changed my values, it changed my thought patterns, it changed my world construct. Um, it changed everything. And so when I write to people or I carry forward this simple message, and sometimes I say it directly, and sometimes I don't,
Mhm.
but this simple message, I love you, and you can love yourself. Now, I had an interesting conversation yesterday with a musician, and if I told you his name, or some of his associates, you would recognize it on a national scale, top 40 type stuff. And I
Mhm.
happened to be in a conversation with him, um, and he said that he said, I tell people I love them. I want nothing else. I say I love you. You don't have to love me back. It doesn't matter. You can't stop me from loving you. And I've thought that same thought about God.
Mm.
We cannot stop however you conceive it, we cannot stop the creative force of the universe from loving us. We cannot stop God from loving us. We cannot stop, whatever being is from loving us.
Mm.
No matter what we do, rob that bank. Well, don't, but if
Well,
you,
don't.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I told you sometimes I don't have filters and
You
everybody should
did,
not,
yeah.
yeah, they should not listen to everything I say.
Not,
But,
not
you know,
literally.
and so his message is simply that. And I thought about it and I'm going to think about it some more because he emphasized that I don't have anything I want from people,
Yeah,
not even for them, as I was saying, to love themselves. He said, I
right.
don't care. I'm just going to love them.
Nice.
I prefer they buy tickets. I prefer they buy CDs. I prefer, but whether they do or not,
Right.
and if you don't like me or you don't like my performance, don't buy another ticket.
Yeah, I
You don't
love
have to
it.
love me. I don't want your love. And so he has had a successful career brushing with the stars
Nice.
and perfectly comfortable where he is because he just loves people.
I love that. That's amazing.
And as I thought about it, I thought, well, when I tell somebody that they can love themselves too, it's a gift.
Hmm.
It's something I'm offering them. And it is so vital, I think.
It is
And
so vital. It is so, I don't mean to cut you off. I was
yeah,
just moved by the spirit. Just,
yeah,
yeah, it's so needed. It's so it's easy to get caught up in all the negativity and get focused on that and start feeling down. But it's so important to have that listen and really take in that message of love of others and love of oneself. So
yeah. So
very
everybody
important.
can go to @TransGrams,
Hmm.
TransGrams. You'll put it in the show notes, as we say in the business.
Yes, I will.
I'm not in the business, so I joke about it. But um, they're welcome to come and to follow if they'd like. The point is not to build followers. It's I could say something corny like it's to build lives, but it's just to God has blessed me,
Hmm.
and I am living in love, and I love to love. And if people want to be loved, um, they can come and watch me in my boring little life.
Just come on by. I will
Yeah.
absolutely leave the links to the show notes. And I just want to thank you personally from the bottom of my heart for all the love that you bring to the women's community, the ODAT women's community, and to my life personally. You're such a blessing. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing your wisdom. And there was too much to cover. I feel like I need to have you back for another round. We'll go
Well,
into
that would be a delight.
yeah. There's so much that we didn't get a chance to cover today, but we'll leave them wanting, as they
That's
say.
right. That's right.
Come
And
on back for next time.
yes, and what has been so life-giving to me is the acceptance that I've experienced in women's groups.
Mhm.
Uh, 12-step groups are the ones I'm in most, but um, wherever I go, women have been very accepting and very loving. And that has helped me love myself. So, um, you exude love. The ladies in our group just love flows from them and through them, and it's just so beautiful.
It really is. We all have this community and connection, and that really lends to sort of the antidote to those negative views of self, world, and future.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I
We are
break into a
connected.
Beatles
And
song?
pardon?
Can I break into a Beatles song?
Sure.
No, I mean I'm just all these songs. All we're saying all these things about love.
All you need is love.
Yeah, 8 days a week.
Right. So great. Well, listen, Teri, thank you so much for joining me today. You're always a pleasure to speak to, and we'll have you on for another round real soon.
Well, can I finish with one last statement?
Please.
Arlena, I love you, and you can love you too.
Yay. That's perfect. Thank you so much, my dear love. We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye bye.